joined now by my broadcast partner on the Bills radio network, color commentator Eric Wood joining us, also host of the Centered on Buffalo podcast. Get his thoughts on yesterday's 3-point win over the Patriots. And Eric, we heard Coach McDermott after the game call the first half sloppy, and it was. The Bills players come into that game, and there was concern there'd be a letdown after a big emotional win on the road at Detroit against the best team in the NFC. And we kind of saw signs of that yesterday, and they had to climb out of a hole to pull this one out.
They did, and, give the Patriots some credit. They played well early in the game. They made some plays. Their first drive was extended by penalties on the defensive backfield, and I was impressed with what I saw from the Patriots early on, especially offensively. Their game script worked. It was to run the football, take a couple shots down the field versus off coverage on third down, get the ball out of Drake May's hands fast, utilize some screens, and it was working. They were clicking. The Bills adjusted in the second half, able to force some turnovers. But, it's hard to get up each and every week, and, much different for these guys nowadays from when I was playing. This time of year, we were hopefully still in the hunt, except for my last year when we broke that playoff drought. These guys, they clinched the division with 5 games to go in the season, and then you have a game out in LA. You have this super emotional game against the Lions, and I'm not saying that they weren't up for this game, but it's easy to maybe just fall into ruts at times where you don't look like yourselves, but they found a way to win, which I heard it said today, there's no pretty losses, but there are some ugly, you're not excited about a pretty loss, but you can get excited about an ugly win, and they found a way to get it done. And there were some bright spots in the game, and I'm sure we'll get to those, but on a day where the passing game's not quite there, there wasn't separation down the field. Josh had his hand deal late in the game, and it just seemed like it was a tough day to get the passing game going. The run game really stepped up, and that's a great sign when you have the ability on a day where your passing game's not clicking to be able to run the football effectively.
It is a weird atmosphere, though. You clinched the division, like, was it 2 or 3 weeks ago, and now you're kind of tapping your toe waiting for the playoffs that you're already in. Certainly the seed is one we've been talking about, the 2 seed, the 1 seed, still theoretically on the table, probably not. You are, as a team, you're kind of awash in this area where mentally it's not for you to control, win or not. And so it's a really weird situation. It kind of showed itself yesterday in the way they came out of the tunnel.
Yeah, I think you're right. And, Kansas City wins another tight one against the Texans, and then it becomes pretty unrealistic for the Bills to get the 1 seed. Now, if the Steelers can beat the Chiefs on Christmas Day, then who knows? Maybe the Bills have a shot at it. Broncos can play the Chiefs tough in week 18, where, a divisional game, you never know what's going to happen. So, Broncos, heck, they might be fighting for a playoff spot.
Yeah,
that might be a bigger game for them than it is necessarily for Kansas City. And so, who knows how this shakes out, but you're right. It is a unique situation they're in right now where they kind of admit after the game that maybe they held some things back offensively, where you don't want to show maybe all your man beaters in the game for when you're likely going to get man-to-man defense in the playoffs, and you don't want to show those things. Now, they did have some new wrinkles, but I think those are things they want to get on film. A package where we saw multiple plays yesterday where Dalton Kincaid goes in an orbit motion. And I understand he's about as much of a slot receiver as he is a tight end, but you rarely see the orbit motion where you're motioning behind the quarterback, utilized by anybody but a wide receiver, maybe a running back in those instances. So a few new wrinkles, but mainly just stuff that we've seen throughout the rest of the year. Now, their heavy package with Alec Anderson was impressive again. That's the package they had on the field to run the clock out at the end. They needed a first down to seal it. They got that first down running the same play 3 times in a row. And I wonder if Josh's hand had an effect on why they decided to pitch that ball 3 times. But right before they called timeout on the last play or the Patriots used their final timeout and they had that third down play, David Edwards was looking at the sideline, kind of going like this with his hands, like, almost like a travel motion in basketball, saying, run that sucker again. And they ran the exact same play, and it looked like the Patriots knew what was coming. They just couldn't stop it. And they had a number of effective plays out of that heavy package. It's been an asset for them this year.
Let's talk about some of those wrinkles because it seemed like there were more in the run game. You had the most extensive work of seeing Reggie Gilliam lined up in the backfield, kind of flared out of a pistol look, offset to the left or right of Josh Allen, and he was used as a lead back up in the hole probably a half a dozen times yesterday. Eric, is that one of the examples you're referring to in terms of putting that on film on purpose?
Yeah, absolutely. And they also used Alec Anderson, putting him in motion before the snap and kind of using him as a battering ram on the play. You get 300 and something pounds already in motion, and then he's going to trap out the defensive end. And then you have Reggie Gilliam leading in behind him. And so I really like that package and some of those different wrinkles that they showed in the run game. And we really didn't see the designed Josh Allen runs yesterday. And I have to think, and I don't blame them, we were saying this on the pregame, that they likely told Josh not to run the ball much yesterday because early on in the game, there seemed to be multiple times where he had space in front of him where these last 4 or 5 weeks, we would have seen him take off in those instances. He chose to try to make a play down the field, maybe throw the ball away, get towards the sideline. And so, I think they took those out of the game plan, the design runs for Josh, and then also told him, don't take any unnecessary shots this week.
And that's probably where we got the sound bite after the game where they, didn't have all that stuff in. And they probably had told him, hey, don't do that. And that, for him, that's probably a pretty big deal because it made him make some different decisions on the field. And, of course, you've got the Jets coming in this week. You got the Patriots on the horizon, two teams you should know very well, although we made the point, this is not a Patriots team the Bills are familiar with Drake May. It was the first time they saw him yesterday. They got caught a couple of times on run options. But coming up with these next 2 games, it's going to be more of the same. And I think, right? I mean, we're not going to come out and see him give the kind of game plan and the performance like they did in Detroit.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And, Josh has taken some shots this year. He hasn't missed time per se, but he got knocked out of the Houston game. He had the hand injury early on, and, he got an X-ray after the game against the Lions. And then yesterday he had the funny bone, which didn't look so funny from the booth as we see him shaking out his hand, and we weren't sure if it's a hand injury, elbow, whatever it may be. But he's taken enough shots this year that if you can really limit those quick game, no design quarterback runs, you can utilize the sneaks. There's generally not a ton of contact on the quarterback on those plays, unless I can't remember who exactly it was that took a shot. I think it was Houston early in the season when they were trying to punch out the ball and then punched him in the head on the play. But all that being said, I think we're going to see a lot of this same game plan. And as much as Bills fans want to rub it in everyone's faces on X and say, look at the stats Josh is still putting up, he's the MVP, and hopefully he's already locked it in. We said yesterday on the pregame, we might not get a ton of stats these next few weeks from Josh. It might be lean into the run game. It could be the weather forecast looks pretty good in Orchard Park this weekend, but you got 40-something degrees with a 60% chance of rain. The following week, you're going up to Foxborough, and it could be bad weather again where you want to lean into that run game, and you don't want to utilize Josh as much in the run game. And so, to me, I think we could see similar things, and you hope the Bills go 2-0, and depending on what happens this week with the Chiefs, and if the Ravens win, I guess, or whatever the seeding is, whatever the situation is. I know the Bills can be locked into the 2 seed after this week. It might be a week to give 17 and a number of guys the week off come week 18 if you're locked into that 2 seed.
Right. And I think it could be as early as this week because, to your point, if the Chiefs win, the 1 seed is no longer attainable. If the Ravens lose on Christmas Day, the Bills are locked into the 2. And then it might become an exercise of how do you triage the last 2 games, knowing you can improve or worsen your playoff seed. So I don't think the Ravens are going to lose to Houston on the road, but we'll have to wait and see on a short week what's sitting around there at that point in time. I want to talk to you a little bit about the defensive performance. Obviously did not look good at the beginning. To Steve's point, yes, new team. Haven't seen the offense with Drake May on the field up close and personal. But in the second half, they get 3 straight takeaways in the second half. And I realize this is a team that has relied on takeaways, but they keep getting them. There's only one game they haven't gotten a takeaway. That was the Rams game, and even that game they only lost by 2. But on top of that, basically the defense held the Patriots to 69 total net yards in the second half until that final drive, again, in which they were more than happy to let the Patriots run as much clock as they wanted with 4:29 left, and they used 3 minutes and 16 seconds before they scored the touchdown. So give me your thoughts on the adjustments made by Bobby Babbitt. You even referenced on the broadcast on how he went to more man calls because there was a lot of miscommunication in those zone defense calls with 4 new guys playing in the back 7.
Yeah, we saw some more man-to-man defense. We saw a lot more Dorian Williams in the second half, filling in for Balin Spector, who might have been hobbled from the calf injury. I understand they were trying to split those reps in the first half to try and not overwork either of them because they were coming into the game dinged. But Dorian Williams, who's played great football for the Bills this year, when he went full-time in that second half, he was a difference maker, whether it was, I'll say especially in the run game, but he flashed as well, especially rushing the passer and blitzing like a madman at times. And there is some concern about this Bills defense right now. I mean, no one's going to shy away from that, but you just hope that this time that Rasul Douglas, Damar Hamlin, Taylor Rapp, Matt Milano, these guys that are getting healthier right now, you just hope that when they all come back, it makes a big difference. And this is valuable reps for a Cam Lewis, a Cole Bishop, a Kaiir Elam, Dorian Williams continuing to get run, Balin Spector's filled in. So you're getting a lot of guys experience and reps. If you do need them again, you just hope when you get all your starters back, your defense looks like it did, prior to the Rams game when you got back-to-back games against Kansas City and San Francisco where you feel really good about the defense, and you just got to get back to there. And, for Bobby Babbitt, you're game planning these games to where maybe you don't want to show some of your blitz packages, dime certain looks, whatever it may be, because these games aren't what matters as most, especially if you're not going to be able to get the 1 seed, but you're trying to put these guys in positions for them to be successful, run your schemes, but then also try and tailor the defense to what they do best. I saw Kaiir Elam in a lot more press man as the game went on, just trying to let him do what he does best. And, Cole Bishop playing in the box more than you might see Taylor Rapp or Damar Hamlin. And those are just my observations. Bobby Babbitt can give you a better explanation. But to me, a number of times this season, and we could go back to each of them individually, there were times where the Bills defense did give up early yards, got gashed early on in the game in Indianapolis on the ground, the opener against Arizona, this New England game, and many others where they make those adjustments, settle into the game, and then they play an outstanding second half.
Absolutely. That was their calling card for the first 6 or 8 weeks of the season. They were a second half football team defensively for sure. A little bit of that went on the other night, as you would imagine. I mean, they gave up 14 points really quick and then shut them down until late in the game, and then started churning out turnovers as well. That has always been, for this 2024 version of the Bills, what their defense has looked like. And with the offense playing the way it has, even yesterday, when the offense found itself, they're snapping off big plays, they're staying on the field. Josh is admitting that they are not playing with the throttle at full blast. I still have a lot of confidence that this team's got a gear nobody else does. And you saw it against the Rams offensively. You saw it against Detroit on their offense. You saw it against the Chiefs. You've seen it against some really good teams when this team is tuned in. The question is, are these next 2 games going to get in the way mentally of a team getting to that point where it's like, yeah, okay, now we can turn it on? You know what I'm saying? You want to show up sharp and healthy. I think sharp is as important as healthy.
I know, I'm with you. And that's why we're probably not sitting upstairs at One Bills Drive and we work on the first floor. You guys do. And I'm at my home office because that's such a tough balance here. If the Bills, could lock up the 2 seed by even this weekend, do you rest some guys this weekend and others next weekend and, pick and choose who you want to, play and not play so that they all get a week off before the playoffs? Or, how do you load manage this? How, what's your practice schedule like? when you're not trying to grind them out, but you're trying to stay sharp, do you, next week, do you practice harder if you're going to rest some starters so that you're getting, faster reps? I mean, ultimately, I would err on the side of being healthier than sharper. But yeah, you want them to be as sharp as possible heading into the playoffs. Hopefully the leadership and the confidence, comes from, their two captains in 17 and 43 that can say, look, we've seen ourselves play at high levels. We have some different packages that maybe we're going to roll out in the playoffs, and we're, excited, confident, healthy, sharp. And here we go. This thing's ours to win. We've already proven that we could beat the top two or the top team in both conferences. And so that's what you hope happens. But yeah, it's such a tough balancing act when you look at this. I thought Ryan Fitzpatrick had a funny social media post today, assuming it's him running his social media. This seems like a Fitz comment, though. He said, okay, if we're holding back and we're not necessarily, going to show anything new, I want Josh throwing to Amari Cooper about 15 times a game, kind of like what we saw against the Rams, to get completely on the same page with him heading into the playoffs.
Yeah.
Work some connections with Coleman or whatever it may be. Maybe that's why they maybe dialed up a few more deep shots yesterday. I don't know exactly. But to me, I just felt like that was a fitting Fitzpatrick comment.
Here's why I think it is such a tough needle for the coaching staff to thread. The lesson learned from last year is, in an ideal world, we'd rather be healthy because we had to play in the wild card round last year and we lose Bernard and Benford going into the divisional round against Kansas City when we had already lost Rapp and Douglas in Week 18 having to win the division. So now you're down 4 guys that start on defense. And then you look at this year, what has been the prevailing problem week in and week out, win, lose, or draw? It's getting off to slow starts and not being sharp. So the very two things that Steve said, being sharp or being healthy, are two problems they've experienced last year at the end of the year and right now in staying sharp and coming out hot, like a firecracker at the beginning of games. I think that's why it's a hard balancing act for this coaching staff, because they've experienced both in the recent past.
Yep, you're exactly right. And, early on in the season, especially on the defense side of the ball, when they're getting off to slow starts, I kind of related it back to early in my career, and Steve would probably say the same. When you're playing earlier in your career, even if it's 4 games into the regular season, it just takes you a little bit longer to, get your feet settled in a game because you haven't seen it as much. And then towards the end of your career, you get to the first play of the game and it just feels like clockwork and the game feels like it's already slowed down. It doesn't take you a series to, get your feet under you, to be able to read your keys fast enough and all that. And so they got to that point and then they got dinged up, which is unfortunate, but hopefully these guys are gaining that experience. And when you get those 3 guys in the secondary back and Matt Milano back, hopefully that you can pick up and start games faster, especially on the defense side of the ball. Offensively, I'm sure people have done, just an extensive breakdown if it was truly just individuals. I felt like, we made a very big deal offensively about their slow starts in game, and rightfully so, because we had so much firepower. You got Josh Allen at quarterback, and they were playing so well in the second half of games or after the first couple drives. We rightfully so were making a big deal about it, but it just never felt like it was a lack of anything other than an individual breakdown here. We dropped a pass on 3rd and 3. We had a penalty to put us back at 3rd and 9, and we missed the 3rd down. And so it wasn't surprising that the slow starts offensively kind of went away.
Well, I'll say this too. This team, and in contrast, they were picked to be 3rd or 4th in the division. They thought the Jets and they thought the Dolphins were going to do it, and they've got the thing wrapped up by week 13. So they got like 5 weeks of meaningless football to get in. They don't have to get in the playoffs anymore. They're in. So they got these 5 weeks of whatever to get through. Yeah, they're chasing Kansas City. If Kansas City's not in the conversation, this is a much more interesting time. And if you want to get reps with Amari Cooper and Keon Coleman, you've had a month and a half to do it. It's over. The division's done. Now they got these 2 games. They got 2 more division games between the Jets and the Patriots. And if the Chiefs win on Christmas, nobody cares. I mean, so you can do that. You still got a half a month to get as many reps with Keon Coleman and Amari Cooper. To do it now, you'll get dull again by the time the end of the regular season. If you started doing that, they have absolutely, and we can blame them for a lot of things. We can blame the Jets and Dolphins for stinking it up and not forcing the Bills to push towards the end of the season if you want to do that. But that's really the situation they're in. The Chiefs have won so many games with a blocked field goal, a bad call, whatever, playing not good. They've won more games this season without scoring 30 points. The last time it happened was the 1927 Yellow Jackets out of Brooklyn. Are you kidding me? They don't score. I mean, that's how they're winning. So you're in this situation where, yeah, you'd love to get all this sharp, but there's nothing to play for. I mean, they still got time to get it sharp. I mean, it's over. Let's get to the playoffs. That's the attitude everybody's got.
You're exactly right. And yes, I don't know that there's been a season where
the 1927 Yellow Jackets.
I don't know that there's been a season where there's a team that's 2 back from the 1 seed, but ranked in every power ranking ahead of that 1 seed over and over. And I understand that they beat them head to head, so that's generally going to be the case. Before we get off of here, Merry Christmas to you guys. And what I want for Christmas, Jay Harris, from you and your team, is to get a clip of Steve blaming the Jets and the Dolphins for the Bills getting off to slow starts last week against the Patriots and potentially the next 2 weeks. I want a clip of that, and we got to put it out on X so that we could see Dolphins and Jets fans just go nuts that we are blaming them for slow starts in games and some lackluster starts. And that would be an incredible Christmas present.
I'm sorry, I got that wrong. It's the 1925 Frankfurt Yellow Jackets.
Okay.
Are the only team to win as many games as the Chiefs did this year without scoring 30 points.
Yeah.
Wow.
1925 Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. Thank you very much, Dolphins and Jets.
Okay, fair enough. We'll let Steve have that. That'll be Steve's Christmas present. He gets to have that.
We can squeeze the Dolphins Jets into every
All right.
conference.
Have a good Christmas with your family, Eric.
Thanks,
We'll see you
Steve.
this weekend.
Merry Christmas, man.
Yep, you guys too. Have a great week.